Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by, cheers, and welcome to the 2021 Project Orchids final update for part 4, endearingly known as The Others, because it's a mix of genera basically. It's also a mix of types of plants that didn't do so well and some that did do so well. The Project Orchids were always about a mix. I didn't go through my orchids picking the best ones. I often picked the worst to see, progress, to see if I could actually bring them back from the brink. And in this particular set, well, we've lost 2. One was given away and one was introduced to put the numbers back up again because it was getting a bit thin on the ground. So to find out which ones went where and which ones are still here, let's make a start on the final update. Okay, so the first one up, Sologeninita. Had this one quite a while, and it wasn't doing too well, which is why it was selected for the project to see if it was going to pull on in the coming growing season. Not looking too good. Bulbs shriveled, 2 tiny new growths at the base, which you can hardly see. They're like little spikes sticking up, and some leaves. Apart from that, not really much to say. Well, when we got 3 months on, nothing really had changed. This plant was not progressing. The new growth spikes, which could flower or not, had pushed on a little bit, but in 3 months that's nothing. It was keeping its leaves, but the bulbs were basically desiccating to the point of no return. Did we get to the point of no return? Not yet, but not far off. This is no good. This was the last time this plant was filmed, and I made the decision to throw it out. The new growths had stopped growing. They'd had plenty long enough to push on, and it was now starting to drop all its leaves. It hadn't grown any roots. It was just a no-go. So this one went in the bin. Bye for now. Right, from one disaster to another. This is not the best group, not the best set. Now I got this one and it wasn't a good plant when I got it. It had a poor root system and it had a spike, but every time it tried to bloom on that spike, it aborted that bloom. And also, it kept trying to grow new growths at the base and they kept rotting off. So the plant wasn't progressing at all. Okay, as I've always said, if something's not working, keep doing the same thing and you'll get the same results. So I tried it in a different pot. We've now moved to a clay pot. We've got a top surrounded by moss, the idea being that it should keep it moist around the base. And eventually we tried this in a polythene bag and effectively that was the end of it. So number 2 in the bin. Not doing very well here, are we? Right, on to number 3, Sarcochilus. Now at least this one was in bloom when we first filmed it, but not a very good plant, not very healthy, and I made the decision, I had 3, that I just couldn't grow them very well and they were too precious to lose. So all of my Sarcochilus, including this one, went to Lynn, who already had a good collection and grows them well. So number 3, gone. Okay, now this one was added in part way through the project. A Bulbophyllum on a mount, but then it is a miniature. I'm quite happy to have that on a mount. It grows quite well for me. It blooms on a regular basis, and the plant itself is doing okay. It just gets bigger and bigger. Eventually it will outgrow this mount, but because it's a miniature, not just yet. Right, when we pushed on to here, You can see spikes now, so this is coming into bloom. It seems to produce a new growth and then blooms behind it, if you see what I mean. So normally the number of new growths is the number of spikes you're going to get. Nice little plant, grows well. Not really much more to say about this. This one's going nowhere, and at least we've got a successful plant in the set. Well, after the first three, I bet you were beginning to wonder if there's any plants left at all in this set. Well, yes there are. That's three gone missing, and this one was introduced. It wasn't there at the start, but I pulled it in to put the numbers back up. Basically, it's my little miniature Bulbophyllum, and quite honestly, this plant's growing nicely. Now, this time of year, it is actually doing new growths, and we've got the one there with the little roots coming, with the bronzy coloured leaf sticking up towards the top. Another small one next to it, pushing on. New leaves are this bronzy colour. Then we've got one pushing out to the left there, another one below it, and another one below that. So that's 5. And then coming round here, we've got one at the very bottom maturing, 6. And then this one coming out the side again. So we've got 7 new growths on here at the moment. It's probably finished sprouting the new growth now. 7's not bad, and in theory that should mean that we'll have 7 spikes down the line. They don't last a long time, the blooms, but they're very attractive. They have that hand shape, as I call it, like a hand being held upside down with the fingers spread out. Yeah, so this one's doing fine. It was put on this mount with live moss, which is just about hanging in there. But my moss doesn't grow too well in the winter because I reduce my watering right down. So it does get dry periods, but it'll buck up again once we get into the watering more regular sort of time of year. New growths are pushing out root, so it will expand its root system now. Most of those roots will get down into the moss, some will remain aerial, but yeah, it's doing okay. I like this plant a lot. I nearly got rid of it. I don't mean threw it away, it would have gone to somebody else. And then it sort of bloomed, and I took another look at those blooms and I thought, actually, I like those, even though they're small. So yeah, doing okay, pleased with that one's progress, doing fine. Okay, so a new genus for me, Renanthera, is warm growers, so they're not going to do brilliant in the winter, but this one, the base started to rot. So it was chosen because it was in the form of a rescue. It ended up with this one large root, and I put it in a pot of moss, just damp, not wet, to try and encourage some root growth around the base. So that was the idea. Let's see how we did. Okay, so it's difficult to see any change, but take a note of the 2 small leaves near the top of the plant, because above them is a maturing leaf out to the left and another one, and they're bigger. So it is putting on top growth, but we have no activity in the pot. So we've still got our one root, that's grown a bit longer, and we have some top growth, but otherwise not much progress. Well, I gave up on the moss because it didn't seem to be doing much good, and I thought we'll try it in an open basket with some lava rock, more akin to a sort of Vanda's nature anyway. I managed to bend the big root round by soaking and carefully bending, and it's branched, so we now have root activity, and you can also see at the top of the plant, the latest growths at the top of the plant, the new leaves are bigger and better, so progress. And another one still with us. The Renanthera is doing okay, but it wasn't. Now it is. And that can be spotted if you were looking a plant over. What's wrong with this plant? Well, if you look at the size of the leaves and then look at here, this area here, the leaves have gone much smaller. Not very good. And then they've perked up again and started producing leaves even larger. So it had a period where it wasn't happy. Yeah, and on a monopodial that extends like these, Vandaceous types, that's a good thing to look out for. Anyway, our one root that we started off with, the big fat one, was this one. And I did manage to bend it round and with a bit of jiggery pokery get it into the basket. Its growing tip died back, but it did produce a few branches. So it's not just a single root anymore. Plus, we did get a new one that started to grow and then stopped. Now a lot of this activity on the roots at this time of year through the winter period is going to stop anyway. I mean, my Vandas do it. Their tips just stop growing basically and disappear. The green tips just disappear. And it's due to the cold. They're not in their comfort zone, so they stop growing. The top growth on this one hasn't stopped, but it has slowed right down and the root tips have disappeared. Once we get the warmer weather and the longer days again, plus I'll start increasing the watering frequency and get some more feed in there, it should start progressing again. It does have a new leaf just starting, so that should push on. But in these short days with these low temperatures, these are just going to slow down to virtually a standstill. So it's still with me, it's doing okay. I haven't had Renantheras long enough to know whether that is a blooming size plant or not. People have told me that they can bloom on what looks like a young plant. And again, I'm not sure if that is a young plant or not. I don't know. I don't know its origins. But nonetheless, it's still here, it's hanging on. And the fact that we're coming to the end of January now and day lengths will start changing, plants will start reacting, certainly in 4 or 5 weeks' time, we should see some progress at a faster rate on this one through this coming growing season. But at least we managed to get it to branch some roots and push on some decent sized leaves, so it's doing okay. Right, this one was given to me as a challenge plant, apparently related to Zygos and not necessarily the easiest to grow. But anyway, I potted it up in the cocoa husk and it seemed to be doing okay. It had grown some roots and was pushing up new growth at this stage, and included in here because it was likely to bloom and a challenge. Well, we got our blooms. These are good. Very attractive blooms on this. Slow to grow and don't last an absolute age, but the plant was, I'll say, sort of doing okay. I won't say it's happy because it's not. It's not vigorous. It's just ticking over, but it's not failing, which is good because apparently these aren't as easy as some other orchids. So doing okay at this point in time. Okay, end of the growing season then, and not much has happened. A few leaves have dropped, old leaves, and I had a new growth aborted, but there is another new growth starting, and we do have some root activity. So the plant's not lost, but I would say as far as progress is concerned, it's gone downhill a bit, but not a lot. It's not failing, it's just not doing as well as it once did. Now the Pabstia, the challenge plant, is hanging in there and it's still with us. It's pushed up a little growth to the side that stopped growing, so that's effectively aborted. It's not going to progress. However, this new growth around this side is pushing on okay. So it's in growth, it does have a new growth pushing on, and it does have roots. It's also incredibly dry. I need to throw some water on that. These shouldn't get that dry. But it should have been watering day today, but unfortunately other things came up. So anyway, apart from that being too dry, which I will do, that specific one plant, as it's under my nose, I will deal with that now. If you get stop-start with things drying out when they shouldn't do, when they're in growth, which this is, you'll start getting concertina leaves and you could even get root tips abort. So it's not a good idea to let things that shouldn't go absolutely dust dry actually get to that state in the first place. What's happening is My day temperatures are a little higher at the moment because I'm opening the door to the lounge, and because I'm not comfortably warm in this house, the heating's on, so it drifts out into here. So I'm actually getting a little bit of daytime temperature. It's not much, it's only 18-19 degrees, but the day lengths are starting to get a bit longer, so things are very, very slowly starting to move. And this is in active growth, so it shouldn't get dry. But it's still with us, it's doing okay. Whether that new growth there is going to bloom or not, I don't know. But hopefully if it doesn't, then the next one will. So not doing bad, considering it was deemed to be quite difficult to keep going, that one. Seems to like the coconut husk as a root medium. The roots are doing pretty good. But yeah, because there's a lot of the roots, it tends to dry a bit quicker than some of the other pots, so I have to keep my eye on this one. But doing okay. Okay, so we end on a high note. At last, a success with a Zygopetalum. This is a rebloom for me following a repot. So basically a zygo that stayed alive long enough following a repot to actually get some spikes going. Two very nice spikes on this. This got a first on our competition tables at the Orchid Society. Doing okay. Okay, so bloom's finished at this point. Not much else happening at the moment. Seem to be having a little bit of a rest, but it's still with me. It's still alive. This is good. Leaves look strong. Leaves look healthy. I'd say if I didn't know better, the pot was too big, but it didn't get potted very well. It's a bit up one side. Okay, so a little bit of progress on this one. New growth starting, and under normal circumstances, following new growths, not long after they start, if it's going to bloom, you'll see the spikes starting. So we were at the stage where it was possible that some spikes would come on this one down the line a bit. Still waiting. As I said at the start with the zygo stills, we'll end on a good one. And that includes as the plant is now. As you can see, we've got two good spikes pushing up there. Now this plant was set wrong in its pot. And what I've actually done is I've lifted it gently out of its pot and set it up with some new media round the edges and underneath it. So it's in a bigger pot, but it didn't get repotted, it got potted on. Those roots didn't get disturbed one iota. And the reason for that is there wasn't a new set growing at the time. So they were undisturbed. So it's now in a bigger pot, which means it stays moisture a bit longer, and we do have some new roots coming off of that new growth. And they are getting down into the media. They don't show in the pot yet because they haven't reached the edge of the pot. They've got a bit of work to do to get to the edge of the pot because they've got quite a lot of new media. So it's something I very rarely do, because what you're doing is trapping the old media in the pot, and it can degrade and take out those roots. But if you stop and think about what happens when you put an orchid in a pot, where do the roots usually end up? They usually end up round the outside of the pot. And so in this case, the new roots and the majority of any root progress is going to be in new media. So if the centre takes down a few roots, it's not the end of the world in this case. So I wouldn't make a habit of it, but in this case where the plants do not like root disturbance, they're very delicate and fragile, so I'm happy to pot on in this case. And quite honestly, it hadn't been in the media that's now in the centre of the pot that long, so it shouldn't be degrading anyway. Anyway, we've got two spikes coming on. We should get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, possibly 6 on there, and probably 4 on there, 3 or 4. There's 3 distinct ones, but there's usually one that sticks out the top, like this one. Yeah, so 2 good spikes. It's kept the majority of its leaves. I've just taken an old leaf off now from here, so it's an old pseudo bulb. But apart from that, it's not doing bad, and I'm pleased to have got a second reblooming on a Zygopetalum. So, like I say, let's end on a good note and look forward to what are some pretty spectacular blooms. Coming soon. Well, not that soon, they're only just starting to show their colour. And they are quite large blooms as zygos go, so the buds have got some work to do yet before they open. But not bad, and well pleased to still have a zygo alive after all this time. End on a good note. So there we go then, a mixed bag. The worst of the 4 parts, I think, as far as the plants managing to hang in there was concerned. Plants come and go, you have to accept that, but that's the final update of the 2021 Project Orchids. We've got a noisy sparrow at the moment. Oh, he's enjoying himself, having a good sing out there. Anyway, this, I'm going to say is going to be replaced. The idea that I put out about picking on some plants that would be suitable for growing them in the home and going through the motions through the season of the sort of things to look out for with these particular choices in the home. Now obviously the home will require many definitions, you know, depending on the part of the world, depending on whether you're using LED lights, depending on whether you've got additional help like humidifiers, whether you're growing on big windowsills or whether you've got a position in the house, you know, that needs LED lights because it has no natural light. So there are many, many variables into what we call the home. And I'll try and include that as a major part of the new set of orchids, is that, okay, with this orchid, how would you look after this if you grew under lights? Do you have artificial heating just for the area where these grow? Yeah, all these sorts of things. And I think it's going to make, well, certainly from the response of the light bulb moment when I thought of it, the response in the comments is, from my point of view, very positive, that this could work really well. So that will effectively replace the Project Orchids, and I may still call it 2022 Project Orchids, but I might think of a new name. Bright ideas in the comments, please. But yeah, that's the basic idea. Now, some people said that it won't be real unless I'm actually growing them in the home. Well, some, not many, will be growing in the home, but very few. Because I haven't got the room, basically. But nonetheless, I have grown, once upon a time, all my orchids were being grown in the home. So it's not like I haven't got that experience. And anyway, we'll take that from there, and I hope you've enjoyed this series. These videos are quite hard work to put together. You can think of, as you watch them, how many elements there actually are. You know, you're looking at a photograph and yet there's sound. Well, that's obviously 2 separate elements, isn't it? Yeah? And I use fade in and fade outs. Some of the plants had pictures of their blooms. That had to be brought in and positioned and everything. And then the actual video clips put in the gaps of the actual plants, the ones that are still with us. So they do take a bit of work, but they keep me on my toes. I enjoy doing them, and if I didn't, I wouldn't do them. So anyway, hope you've enjoyed that set. It's another year done, and they're very late. These should have all been done in December, but I was a bit busy doing other things at that time of year. So thanks for it. I hope you've enjoyed them, and the new idea will start soon, probably sometime in February. Well, it's going to be February, nearly February now. So sometime soon. Thanks for dropping by. Bye for now.